My name is Jim Kaseman. Welcome back. We're talking about how to get to know God intimately. We're talking here for a few sessions now on faith, because without faith it's impossible to please God. And you must what? Without faith it's impossible to please God, and you must believe that He is. God doesn't have a physical body. He's a spirit. You can't see Him. So the only way to walk with God is by faith. All right. Now, we've ended up, we're talking about faith and heart, the difference between the physical body and the human body, and where the believing actually takes place is in your heart. So we've talked about all of those scriptures. But then we finally ended up with going to Luke chapter 16 and verse 19, beginning with verse 19, and we see the account of the rich man and Lazarus. And we ended up here in verse 22 and 23. Well, 22 rather. So it was, the beggar died and was carried by the angels to Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. So their bodies are both dead and buried. But now they still are alive, because spiritual death is different than physical death. And to be alive spiritually means that you can live for eternity with God. To be dead spiritually means you spend eternity in hell. All right, but now their bodies are dead and they're decaying, right? Physical eyes, everything physical is already decaying before they even put it into the grave. It's already rotting. It's no different than roadkill. You know, you see these animals dead on the highway, immediately they start to decay with all the maggots and everything else. And that's exactly the way it is with physical bodies. I think I shared this story before, but I was down in Cuba one time, in Havana, and I don't know how it happened, but this young pastor was giving me a tour of the city. We ended up at the city cemetery, or whatever they called it, but anyway, the cemetery. And it was kind of interesting, because they would leave the coffins in the ground for X number of years, and then they would dig them up and take the bones and put them in a concrete block box that they had made. They put the bones in there, and then they stored them on a shelf like you would in a library in this building. And then the coffin was empty now, and so they put it in a huge pile out there. And then when the pile got big enough, they would set fire to it and burn up the coffins. And now they've got room for some more coffins. But then there were some people who didn't get buried with coffins underground. They were in the building, and what do they call them? Mausoleums, I guess they call them. In other words, so the body is put inside this little square. You know, it's granite, and then the granite, there's the granite piece that fits on the end. Well, we were in there looking around, and then I happened to notice there was a corner broke off of this one end, and that it was actually a little loose. So I was able to pull it away. Oh my goodness! I saw a human body in there. And I saw bones, and I saw a lot of black tar-like substance, it looked like. And then these clothes hanging on these bones. And you could see the body had decayed into some kind of a tarry substance. That's what it looked like. It was gross. See, the physical body immediately begins to decay. I never forget that scene. Anyway, but then look at verse 23. And being in torments in hell, or Hades, he, the rich man, lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham afar off and Lazarus in his bosom. Now notice this. First of all, he's got feelings. He's got emotions. He's tormented. And in Hades, he feels the pain. And then he lifted up his eyes. Well, what eyes? The physical eyes are decaying in that physical body above, on top of the earth. So the human spirit has eyes. Well, where there's eyes, there's got to be a head. And where there's a head, there's a body. And he saw. So he saw what? Abraham afar off, or God, or Lazarus in his bosom. And he saw Lazarus. Now, look, he recognized Lazarus. Now, he doesn't have a physical brain or a physical body, but he recognized them. So look at that. When we, I said for years, well, this would work good 40 years ago when I was preaching. I would say, when I was teaching on this subject, I would say, okay, now, if I could just park my body right here behind this podium or alongside the podium, and then I will step outside of my body, you would see a pair of twins standing here. You'd see me as a human spirit. If you could see into the spiritual realm, you'd see me, and then you'd see my physical body. We both looked alike. But of course, now it's not that way because 40 more years or so have passed, and now my physical body still has death in it, so it's dying, and it's changing. It's getting old. Now, if I stepped outside of my body, and if you could see both me as a human spirit and my body, you'd see both of us look alike. My body looks similar to me. You'll recognize me, but you'd recognize me. We both look alike. And so when we get to heaven, we will recognize each other. So he saw Lazarus. Now, look at this in verse 24. Then he cried and said, Father Abraham, mercy on me, and send Lazarus that he may dip the tip of his finger. Well, he doesn't have a physical body. He's a spirit, but human spirits have fingers. Remember in Exodus 33 when God appeared to Moses? God had a hand, he had a back. Couldn't see his face, so if there's a face, there's a head. And so you can see this. And so then, and Lazarus, they dipped the tip of his finger in water and cooled my tongue. So there's feeling. There's feeling. So the human spirit has 5 spiritual senses, just like the physical body has 5 physical senses. And so when I live inside of my body, as a human spirit, I can on occasion sense things in the spiritual realm, but my emotions are primarily expressed through the 5 physical senses. Just like you can't hear me talk, but I'm using my vocal cords of my physical body, and that's how I communicate with you, and then you hear it with your physical ears and be able to understand what I'm saying. And you're trapped inside that physical body just like I am. But we use our physical bodies to maneuver in this physical dimension and communicate to each other and all that sort of stuff. And Abraham said, now get this one, son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things, and now he's comforted and you are tormented. So memory. Now again, the physical body is rotting. It's dead. The whole physical body is rotting. But now in the spiritual realm as a spirit, son, remember. There's memory. Memory where? In the human spirit has memory. And so, like, I've had experiences with an elderly lady I'm thinking of right now who had actually dementia or Alzheimer's, so didn't even recognize us anymore. And but could sing out of her heart, could sing songs, every word. Every word. I mean, it was in her heart. Memory. And so when we leave our physical bodies, there's memory in the spiritual dimension. And besides all this, there is a great gulf fixed so that those who want to pass from here to you cannot, nor can those from there pass to here. So in the physical dimension, see, there's this physical dimension, and then there's a spiritual dimension, which is right here. We live in 2 worlds. I'm a spirit and I'm a physical body. And if my eyes could be open so I could see in the spiritual realm, you'd see these angels. My angels are assigned to me. They're right here with me. They're right here with me. So we live in 2 worlds. Now in the spiritual dimension, there's not only the heavens around the earth, there's the spiritual heaven around the universe, and then there's the 3rd heaven where God lives, and where the city 4 square is, and there's dimensions. So, for example, there's heaven, that's one dimension, that's where Lazarus is, and then there is hell, which is another dimension. And you can't get from hell to heaven, or heaven to hell, any more than I can get from this physical dimension into the spiritual dimension. They're separated. You can't get in there. There's a great gulf fixed. So you can't go from one place to the other. Isn't that interesting? Well, anyway, here we go again. Got sidetracked a little bit. But you just be blessed until the next session. Glory be to God. Amen.